Bob Herbert's OpEd.tv is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation with the support of Ann Ulnick. Hi, I'm Bob Herbert. Welcome to OpEd.tv. The City University of New York is enormous and astonishingly diverse. It's a fabulous resource, but it's been pummeled, like the rest of us, by the terribly hard times that we're going through. I had the opportunity to talk about these issues with my guest, the Chancellor of the City University, Félix Matos Rodriguez. Chancellor, thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you, Bob, for inviting me. I'm delighted to be with you and with the rest of the CUNY TV family during these trying times.
Appreciate it. So let's start with the pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about the effect that this COVID-19 problem has had on City University, both the operations and the personnel?
I mean, first on the human side, it's been, an incredibly difficult time for all of us in the CUNY family. We've had about 37 key individuals that we all love that we lost, 4 students and about 16 and 17 staff and faculty members. Many of our students, faculty, and staff have contracted the virus, and others have been caring for people that have the virus. So it's been an incredible, sort of emotional toll on the entire City University family. And then combined with the operational challenges, when we moved to distance learning in early March, we had to adapt 50,000 courses to this distance learning modality, and I have to give kudos to the faculty and to the staff and to the students. We took a little break to be able to do some training and do some preparation to do that, but it's not the semester that we had planned for.
Right.
Obviously, there was a lot of work that needed to be done, so it's taken a lot of work. I mean, most of our staff are, sort of telecommuting, and at the end of the day, safety is the first and most important thing in the job that we do. And we wanted to keep everybody safe, but trying to protect the semester for our students to keep that academic momentum going. So it's been challenging, but again, I have been really, really impressed and proud in the way that people have responded, in the solidarity, the desire to move the agenda forward, to be supportive of each other, to have empathy. Some lessons learned as we move into the future too, which is important. But it's been a semester to remember.
We were talking a little bit off camera about the psychological impact of everything that everyone has been going through. New York has been the epicenter of this crisis. People are feeling anxious, in some cases depressed. Can you talk a little bit about the way this has manifested itself among the people associated with CUNY, students, staff, administrators?
We have as complex a picture as New York City is, right? So we have incredible stories of heroism and hard work. Many of the city's first responders are graduates, right? And some are faculty that serve as adjuncts with us. So our first medical school graduating class, which would have been a historic moment by any mark, graduated a couple of months earlier to be able to serve and be part of the state and the city response to the crisis. A lot of our nurses, many of our students who were in allied health professions, we move the graduation requirements so they could be finished early and be out there helping to respond. And we have the essential personnel also that we still have in the campuses present. So a lot of stories there of everyday life heroes on our side. And then also a lot of anxiety. I mean, one of the things that we talk to the faculty is that, this is just not a normal semester. We adjusted the way that we give our grade so the students could switch to credit, no credit after 20 days that they get their grade. Because we know that the conditions were not optimal mentally, psychologically, for one to do the best work academically. Similarly, the faculty were going through those issues too, so it was not just the students. So we talked to the students and said, you have to remember that your faculty members are also dealing with situations at home and all of this. It made us sort of put additional resources on mental health areas. That I think is something that we're going to have to continue to do as we move forward, and to make sure that everybody has the support that they need to address what we are facing. There's also been an incredible loss of jobs. Right, we did a survey among our students, and about 40% of the students reported that they have lost either a full-time or a part-time job.
Right.
So there's a great job of rebuilding to be done on the economy and the anxiety that creates. And we responded with fundraising. We have the Chancellor's Emergency Relief Fund, and we raised about $5 million to give direct assistance to the students. So it's a complicated time. I think the university has responded with great tenacity. I'm proud of that, but I also know that it's been incredibly taxing, and that that we still have a road ahead with some bumps.
I mentioned in the introduction how enormous the university is. I think even a lot of New Yorkers don't realize just how big. Can you give us a sense of just how vast City University is?
Sure. We are the largest urban university system in the United States. It's 25 campuses that are physically run through all our 5 boroughs. And we have 250,000 students in credit programs. Wow. We have another 250,000 students in continuing education programs. So we have about 500,000 students. Our faculty and staff are 50,000. So, each campus, can be a small city in the U.S. So, and we are one of the only systems in the country where someone can go from getting a high school equivalency degree and within the same system, complete an education that can lead to a doctorate degree, to a professional degree like law and medicine or public health. So a very vast system that really has been the educational anchor institution of New York City in the 20th century.
City University has had the reputation for a long time, for generations, of being a gateway to the middle class for lower income New Yorkers. It's also an important platform for the city's workforce. So talk a little bit, if you can, about what the city, how the city benefits. And when I say the city, that means all of us, how we benefit from the existence of City University.
First, we represent all the great talent that the city has. About 40% of our students are the first one in their families to go to college. They represent the great diversity that the city of New York has. About 30% of our students, were not even born in the U.S. So that great immigrant story, which is so much part of New York City's DNA, is very much embedded in CUNY. About 90% of our students who are graduates stay in New York City. So we're a university that educates New Yorkers and allows New Yorkers to stay in New York and continue to contribute. And that can go from the physician that treats you at the hospital, to the first respondent, to the teachers, to the computer science specialists. In all trades, you find CUNY graduates. So we are documented as the best university in the country of moving individuals who are at the bottom 25 percentile of the socioeconomic ladder into the middle class and above. So that angle of social mobility is a really, really deep part of City University's mission and track record of success. And we're also part of the cultural life of the city, not just producing creative individuals, but also in our campuses providing cultural events for particularly underserved communities in different, in different parts of our boroughs. So a key anchor institution, our faculty are some of the experts that the city is looking to in trying to resolve some of these issues around the pandemic. There were some of the individuals giving advice to the governor at the state level, to the mayor at the city level. We had faculty members that have a patent for a dye that you can put in garments that will make our garments immune to the virus, right? And wow. I can give you examples. So again, contribute to the city in many ways. And also as we work very hard now to rebuild our city from this economic and public health crisis, I have no doubt that the City University is going to be a key partner. And we've already been working with the city and the state in thinking about some of the things that we need immediately and the things that we're going to need in the medium and long term to bring the city back up.
At least some of the great work that CUNY is doing is going to be threatened by this economic crisis that we're going through. We're experiencing depression levels of unemployment and other enormous economic setbacks as a result of the pandemic. The city and the state are experiencing revenue shortfall, so there's going to be budget problems. And of course, CUNY is dependent on the city and state for much of its operations. What are you anticipating, and what steps are you taking in terms of contingency plans?
One of the key things is that we've been very active in the lobbying at the federal level, because I think that we all agree that federal intervention is needed to support the state and the city, and not just New York, but across the country, so that we can have a systemic response to the economic crisis. So active in many of the higher ed organizations that I belong to, in conversations with the members of the New York State delegation in the Senate and in Congress about how important that is, because that key relief to the state and to the city is going to trickle down not just to the City University of New York, but also to the other programs that serve the students and the faculty that are part of the City University of New York, right? So we obviously want to make sure that we get the funding that we need to keep our educational mission going, right? But we're also aware that cuts in other areas affect our students and our faculty, our staff, right? So we want to be part of an ecosystem that provides a systemic solution to the budget. So one of the key things has been sort of lobbying at the federal level for additional resources, because that's a key part of the puzzle. And then we've just been preparing with different scenarios, right? We hope that federal support comes in and that allows the budget picture at the state and the city to be improved. But our job is to be ready, and no decisions have been made about that, because we're all waiting to see finally what the outcome is going to be. And then also keeping the conversations in Albany and the city about how if there is pain, you expect that pain to be sort of shared in an equitable way, but also acknowledging that higher education is part of the long-term solution to get out of the fiscal crisis, right? That additional investments in what we do at CUNY are going to be incredibly helpful to lift all boats up.
One of the things that's been somewhat controversial is, and if I understand this correctly, the CUNY has signaled the possibility or perhaps its intent to lay off some adjunct faculty. Can you talk a little bit about that? What's accurate about that, and why take that step now?
What we have done is sort of planning scenarios. And to have planning scenarios, you need to be able to be ready for different kinds of situations. And if you do it in a transparent way, you need to engage people, right? So in the conversations in each campus, getting ready for the worst, while working on the ground hard to avoid the worst from happening. We've been thinking about, what would it mean for all of us if the CUNY got a cut that was, 5, 10, 15%. Not that we're hoping for that, but it would be irresponsible if that came about for us not to be ready. And to do that, you need to engage the faculty and the chairs and the shared governance. So it's not a conversation that you can have in hiding. So we've been public about that, but it's just been hypothetical scenarios. I mean, there's been no layoffs done. We have, and that's been part of the mandate by both, at the state level from the governor and also from the city, to try to protect as many jobs as we can during the pandemic. So the conversation has been about planning scenarios, and actually we have deadline for the notification of the adjuncts. To be concrete about that point, is something which is set in the collective bargaining originally with a date of May 15th. So we couldn't avoid that date because it is in our collective bargaining with the PSC, with our union. Normally we have a budget by this time, so we can make a decision, right, based on that. So we've been advocating, and we actually got the deadline pushed to June 30th at my invitation to the PSC, hoping to have a more accurate budget picture. Of course, if there's a better budget picture, if the enrollment numbers are better, right, there'd be no need or less need of any cuts. So all we've done is been planning, and planning at the central level and at the campus. So no concrete layoffs or anything of that sort so far.
I'm old enough to remember the fiscal crisis in New York City back in the 1970s, and it was a horrible time. I remember the famous Daily News headline, "Ford to City dropped dead." If the federal aid that we all agree is needed, if that is not forthcoming and large numbers of layoffs at CUNY are required, what does that mean in terms of the services CUNY offers? What does it mean does it mean that courses have to be cut back? Does it mean larger classes, smaller student population? Can you give us a sense of that?
Well, I mean, I think it's a little bit early to sort of speculate on that. Obviously, if we were forced to think about measures that deal with cost cutting, we always try to preserve the core elements of the mission and of the work that we do, and protect that, which would mean courses and the research part of the operation. So we'll be looking to try to trim in other areas that do not affect that. So again, I think that since nobody really has a crystal ball, what we have been doing is pressing for that federal aid, which, as you said, is really indispensable, and getting ready for difficult scenarios. But again, hoping that that's not the case, because that would not allow us to really provide the services that we want for our students, and actually would also mean that other services that our students and our faculty staff depend on, which are provided by the city and the state, would also be lacking there too, right? So it's part of a larger ecosystem. So again, we will defend sort of core elements of our mission, and we're all working very hard to hope that we don't have to have a similar headline like the one that you alluded to from the fiscal crisis.
Right. Let's talk about what's going on now at CUNY. You touched on it. You said that there's distance learning going on. Can you give us a sense of how that works? What are students and faculty doing? And are all courses being offered, or have some been curtailed or cut back? What's actually happening?
So in terms of the spring, we kept all the courses. We transitioned to distance learning, and there might have been a few labs or studio courses, but we had done enough of the semester that I think we were able to salvage that for those students in a way that met all of our accreditation requirements, which is indispensable as we do these things. The summer sessions are going to be fully online. And we're happy to report that we've had a 17% increase in the enrollment for the summer. So there's an eagerness for that, for those CUNY credentials. And we hope that some of that continues for the fall and the spring. We have not made a final determination about what the final modality would be for the fall. I mean, I think in any case, it's going to have a larger number of online and or hybrid modalities. I think it's the best way to be ready for the multiple things that could occur in the fall. Thinking about that, we've been investing heavily in the training of our faculty and staff on online education. We had a cohort of about just under 500 faculty who finished an intensive training in online teaching provided by our School of Professional Studies. We have slots for another 1,500 over the summer because if we're going to be providing more online courses until we get to a vaccine world, right? We want that instruction to be of the best quality possible. And again, the response by the faculty has been very, very enthusiastic about wanting to get that training. And we're also doing that for staff to the extent that we have to provide more services via telecommuting. We want the advising, the bursar's office, all the transactions that you normally do physically that now have been done virtually to have the best technique, the best in class. And we're also investing in training our staff in doing that. So a lot of still moving parts in terms of what's ahead, but we've been trying to plan, and we also conducting a survey from faculty and students about how the experience was this spring, to learn from that, to improve what we do. So it's a teaching moment, and then hopefully we want to go into the fall a lot more prepared for the scenarios ahead.
Did all of the students who were supposed to graduate at the end of the spring semester that's been concluded, did all of the ones who were supposed to graduate actually graduate? So
you're going to have to interview me in a few more weeks to have the final tally of the students who graduate, because it takes some time always to certify who has graduated, even if you're allowed or not to participate in the commencement ceremony. I mean, I think it's fair to assume that some students lost that academic momentum, and some of the things that we've been thinking about is going back and connecting with them and seeing if we can use the summer as a way to get them back on track to finish, or something creative also and supportive in the fall. So we're in the process of assessing that. I think that it's fair to assume that maybe some students, either because of personal circumstances or because they just were not quite ready to adapt to the distance learning, might have stopped, and we want to recapture and get them back. And we're trying to be direct about doing that, hopefully using part of the summer and also part of the fall.
Got it. And we've only got a couple of minutes left. There, of course, have been intense demonstrations and protests across the country having to do with police violence and actually a number of related matters. Can you talk about how that has affected the campus and CUNY students?
So there's been a lot of conversations in many of our campuses, town halls and spaces like that, for the community to come together and talk about these issues. I mean, there is healing and comfort that is derived from being listened to and have that communication, a sense of community, even if you might be talking about difficult issues and maybe even when you don't agree. So that has been going on in many of our campuses. We're trying to think about what is the right way system-wide to continue to build on that, right? Because the important thing is to listen to what feedback and reflection is coming, and then see what kind of changes we need to do in the way that we conduct business, in the way that we engage with other stakeholders in the city and the state. So we're in the process of doing that, listening to those voices. I think at the end of the day, with all our imperfections, universities are spaces of hope. It is where the places where some of the racist behavior that we saw, some of the anti-Black sentiment that we've been seeing can hopefully be eradicated, right? And can be unlearned if you wish, is where some of the critical thinking that is going to lead to better things needs to occur. So we need to keep that space of hope transparent and moving forward, and acknowledge that this is a longer term conversation.
I have many more questions, but we've run out of time. I've been speaking with CUNY Chancellor Félix Matos Rodriguez. Chancellor, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you, Bob.
I appreciate it.
And happy to be back anytime. And please stay safe.
Fantastic. You too. Take care.
Take care.
That's all for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time.